The sheep of the ancestors, the original sheep as the Navajo called them, have sustained the people of the American Southwest for 400 years. Once numbering in the millions, this breed became nearly extinct by the 1970s. Today, it is making a comeback. To celebrate the return of the Navajo Churro, a loyal group of shepherds and weavers gathers each summer with family, friends, and flocks. Together, they learn, compare, and compete at an event so deep in Navajo tradition, it is called Sheep is Life.
I remember my grandmother always saying, as long as you have sheep, you'll never go hungry, you'll never go poor, which is why the sheep was placed here for us by the gods.
J. Begay Jr. is a breeder of registered Navajo Churro sheep, certified wool and breed inspector, and an expert weaver. His homeland is near Hard Rock, Arizona, a small community situated on Black Mesa in the Western Navajo Reservation. Here, Jay proudly continues to herd sheep in the traditional Navajo or Diné way, which he learned as a boy from his grandmother.
With us, as kids, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have TVs, so our source of entertainment was coming to the sheep corral and watching the lambs play. My grandmother buried our umbilical cords in the middle of the sheep corral. So she would say, no matter where you go in life, you'll always think back to the sheep corral.
Jay is actively engaged in showing his prize-winning sheep and educating young Navajos about their heritage. He's been invited to speak throughout the United States, as well as in Europe, on the importance and tradition of the Churro breed. For Jay, taking up sheep herding was not a conscious decision, but a calling already in his blood.
My grandmother would always say, treat them well, and they'll treat you well too. And to this day, I continue that with my sheep.
Shiliye aneye, shiliye aneye. Shiliye aneye, aneye. Shiliye aneye, shiliye aneye. Shiliye aneye, aneye. I've been herding the churro as far back as I can remember. And even with my mom telling me the story of me being perched on her back in a cradle board, I guess way back, even when I was in her stomach.
The grandson of a medicine man, Roy Cady is also sheep herder, educator, and community leader. An award-winning master weaver, he travels nationally and internationally, sharing his art and knowledge of Navajo traditions. He lives in Tisnos Pass, a Navajo community in the Four Corners where Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico line up like a geometric rug design. Here, his ancestors herded their flocks from the San Juan River Valley to the high meadows of the Carrizo Mountains. Roy learned to herd and care for the flock from his mother, Mary Claw. As a girl, she was kept from school in order to protect and continue the herding tradition.
In the Navajo culture, there was a child that was hidden from the government officials so that they can continue the sheep tradition. And she was the one that was given that honor. And she sees it as an honor. She says that, if she not been given that opportunity, she said, I don't think we would have sheep. I don't think we would even exist here.
Traditionally, they say that It was a talking God that placed the sheep here for us. They say that the clouds were brought down and shaped into the body of the sheep.
And he also picked some willow branches, because the willow branches are very straight, and inserted the body with the willow branches for its legs.
And then the rainbow was taken and made into the hooves and the horns of the sheep. And the face was made of dawn, and the rock crystals were placed in the face for the eyes. And then the sheep tobacco was placed in the head of the sheep for the ears. And then a breath of life was blown into them, and the sheep was created. And that's the traditional story that I've heard of how the sheep was placed here for us.
The canyon walls and rock faces of the Colorado Plateau reveal many ancient images of sheep. Perhaps the ancestors wandered into the Southwest as hunters of bighorn sheep and other game.
When we refer back to the creation story, when the sheep were created, a particular sheep was also created, and that was the bighorn sheep. That was initially placed on earth, but it was referred to as the sheep of the deities. But for you earth surface people, you will acquire a more domesticated sheep at a later time. That's why they resemble each other. That's why the Navajo Churro Sheep also has some instincts of being wild. Because of the creation story and what the creation story told us, we used to carry fetishes of sheep in our pollen bag. And so genetically, in our memories, it was instilled in us that this particular sheep will come to us, and we were yearning it. And when we were finally ready to acquire the sheep, that's when we believe we acquired it from the Spaniards and also from our Pueblo neighbors.
In the late 1500s, Spain extended her territory into what is now Arizona and New Mexico. With Spanish colonists arrived cattle and valuable flocks of sheep, including the common churro. This Spanish name refers to the long, coarse fleece characteristic of the breed, so valuable for weaving. These sheep soon caught the attention of the native people, and under their careful stewardship multiplied and adapted well to the semi-arid mesas and rocky canyons of the Colorado Plateau. Like the wild sheep before it, this domestic animal could provide what was needed for survival: meat, milk, hides, horn, and wool for weaving blankets and clothes. Everything was used, even the insides of the hooves. Each spring, before herding the flock up to the mountain pastures, Roy prepares the sheep for the journey. With the help of his neighbor and medicine man Ron Garnanes, the rituals are performed according to traditional holistic practices.
We call this plant right here Wallachita ant plant or ant food, and this is so your sheep, well, like the ants come home to the same place all the time.
Smoking the sheep with these herbs is a traditional way to rid the sheep of parasites. Sneezing and snorting, they expel the bots from their sinuses. There is no need for synthetic medicines.
I'm praying for the sheep and so that they can continue to prosper, so that they can continue to take care of the land, so that they can bring moisture and make the land flourish, and also to continue to care for us in turn and do the same for them. And so this whole ceremonial with the smoking is a prayer for them, and so that they can also have a safe travel and a safe journey to where they're going, up to the mountain where they'll graze all summer. The sheep are up ahead of us, and they're, I'll say about a couple hundred yards away, and they'll just keep going. A lot of the older sheep, they know where to go, especially the goats. So they're leading the pack, and then all we're doing is we're following them on the trail and then making sure that everybody's accounted for. The majority of my flock is all certified, registered churros. And so we also raise about 5 alpacas. And then we have 1 llama, who is a guard llama. The name of this mountain, people refer to it as Navajo Churro. It's a changing mountain. The ceremonial name is Blystone, meaning a mountain high up. And since it's the highest in elevation, it reflects that. The sheep, when they come up here and they eat the wild forage and the medicinal plants, it keeps them healthy, and then it gets into their system. So when we eat their meat, it is, we also reconnect in the healing process and the harmonious state of our livelihoods here.
In spite of its vital importance to the Navajo, the churro has nearly come to extinction twice. The first instance occurred in 1863, when the Navajo were declared enemies of the United States. Kit Carson, sent by the United States government to conquer the tribe, burned crops and peach trees, and organized the massive slaughter of their flocks during the time remembered by the Navajo as Wi'ulti. A few clans escaped to remote canyons with the remaining sheep and avoided the roundup and forced march known as the Long Walk to Bosque Redondo in eastern New Mexico. When they returned to their homeland in 1868, they rebuilt their flocks, and by 1890 there were 1 million sheep on the reservation. The flocks were decimated once again in the 1930s. At that time, land managers trying to offset erosion and overgrazing of the Dust Bowl era ordered stock reductions. This led to indiscriminate slaughter and subsequent replacement of churro with other more meaty sheep breeds, such as the Rambouillet, Suffolk, and Merino. Navajo weavers were left with short staple, greasy fleece, unsuitable for hand weaving, and sheep more vulnerable to disease and the harsh environment. To government livestock officials, the breed was only a relic of the past. Ironically, in the 1950s, research at the USDA Fort Wingate Livestock Program in Gallup, New Mexico, recognized the churro as the most suitable breed for the arid Southwest environment, but its genetic traits were valued merely for crossbreeding with other sheep types that gained weight faster and were more widely adaptable. By the 1960s, the Fort Wingate station was closed, and the flock of churro was dispersed. A decade later, Dr. Lyle McNeil, a professor of animal sciences, discovered some of the Fort Wingate sheep on a remote California ranch during a class field trip. The sheep were being hunted by Hollywood sportsmen and mounted as trophies.
My interest was really triggered in 1972.
Doc discovered that there remained approximately 435 original Navajo sheep on the reservation. Having grown up among Native Americans and being keenly aware of the great loss when bison were all but destroyed, Doc McNeil felt compelled to save this animal that had been so valuable to Navajo, Pueblo, and Hispano cultures.
I did more research. I had spent time interviewing some of the old scientists that were at Fort Wingate when it was functional, even back into the 30s during the stock reduction era. And so it was a combination of all these things that led me to start up the active search and development of the Navajo Sheep Project, rescue and breeding back and redeployment to the Navajo people in 1977.
Lyle acquired 6 ewes and 2 rams from the California rancher to start a flock that would be the basis of the genetic restoration of the breed.
The shearing school in Shiprock, I saw some churros there, or original Navajo sheep. And that said, I got to search the res because that's where I'm going to, I don't want to inbreed. And I need more sheep to keep this thing going. And that's when I started the search on the reservation. And it went on for years, for a couple of decades, finding these sheep. When I started, even the Navajo people, most of them didn't know what a churro was or an original type sheep, except some of the real elders.
Lyle's decades of work has succeeded in restoring the breed. Today, in the United States, there are over 5,000 registered Navajo Churro ewes and about 3,000 unregistered sheep. In 2008, Dr. Lyle McNeil won the Carnegie Professor of the Year Award. He continues to judge animals and wool at Sheep is Life and other events, teaching young sheepherders the best traits and characteristics of the breed. Breeding stock from the Navajo Sheep Project helped form the nucleus of a regional economic initiative aimed at restoring the weaving traditions of Hispano and Pueblo communities, where the churro had first been introduced by the Spanish.
By the late 1970s, I was hearing a lot of excitement about Navajo Churro Sheep, both from New Mexico and Utah. Lyle McNeil at Utah State University was bringing back the breed genetics, but Maria Varela and Los Ganados del Valle was showing that both the meat and the wool could command high prices, that they had unique qualities that people were very interested in.
Dr. Gary Paul Nabhan, researcher, author, and a champion of restoring working landscapes and native foods, also keeps churros. His wife, Dr. Laura Monti, is a spinner and a weaver. Gary believes that breed restoration, cultural preservation, and marketing work together to build economically viable communities.
After the genetics were conserved, it would just be a museum piece unless these people had developed markets for specialty Navajo dyed wools, for grass-fed mutton and lamb. And so it went from being a museum piece, yes, we've saved it, to being part of the culture again.
By the 1980s, the revival of Navajo sheep had become the collaborative focus of numerous weavers, sheep herders, entrepreneurs, and breed conservationists from around the United States, who founded grassroots organizations such as Tierra Wools, Pastores Lamb, Cerro Molino Wool Works, Denebe Ine, and the Navajo Churro Sheep Association.
And then I'll just shake it out again and it'll go. Hang it up and dry it.
We had folks like Antonio and Mali Manzanares, Connie Taylor, and Maria Varela bringing the Hispanic traditions together, but also reaching out to Dene neighbors at Rama Navajo and on the Big Navajo Reservation. And those people decided not to compete with one another, but market the sheep and develop means of producing it sustainably that I think all of us have benefited from. They are the forefathers and mothers of this effort.
Navajo weaving is a holistic art. The wool, dyes from local plants, the symbols of earth, sky, water, and spirit are interwoven to create beauty and a sense of the harmonious relationship between the elements of a natural world. For this artistic and spiritual expression, the fleece of the churro provide the perfect fiber.
The churro sheep, they have a soft inner coat and then a somewhat coarse outer coat. So they're double coated, and there's a lot less lanolin in their fleeces, which is ideal for the area that we live in because we don't have much water, and the fleece is a lot, it's faster to clean with less water.
And so this is a very low maintenance animal, also because of the fiber. It can produce about 16 different natural colors. And so for a weaver, as an artist, I like the colors. I like working with the natural colors as well. And it's also a fiber that can take well, color fast, and dyes, vegetal dyes. And so it doesn't need molding. It's a wonderful fiber as well. Very lustrous and very strong.
By the year 2000, the wool was going for less than 5 cents a pound. Now, Navajo sheep herders regularly get over $1.10 a pound for the wool. And when it's value added, that is, when it's hand spun and traditional dyes are used in giving it color, it can go for as much as $100 a skein that weighs a pound. That's a big change.
In 2006, the Slow Food Foundation for Biodiversity formally recognized the Navajo churro meat as a distinctive food of deep cultural value, one that is worthy of special recognition and marketing support. Today, The members of the Navajo Churro Presidium project sell their traditionally herded and holistically raised lamb to restaurants and individuals in northern Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado.
Meat is going for more than $6.50 a pound in some places now, and that is unprecedented. So for the first time in decades, Dene and Hispanic people can make a living for keeping up their traditions with this animal. That's a big difference.
The rescue of the Navajo Churro sheep forges a link between the past and the future. Songs and ceremonies can be passed on to an emerging youth who value the knowledge of weaving and herding. These traditions now have a better chance to remain culturally relevant and economically viable for future generations.
We have to keep these sheep going, and I think they are going to be okay. I feel good today.
The key issue is how to keep Navajo Churro sheep a working breed in working landscapes and a multi-purpose animal. We should not have selection just for the wool products or for the meat or for the hardiness. We should make sure that it remains an animal that can be used for its double fleeced wools and for its delicious meat.
I would like for my people to continue the tradition of the churro sheep and continue to re-educate the youth with the livelihoods and the lifeways of the churro sheep, to continue sharing the songs and the stories of the sheep. And so I would like for people to help in restoring the sheep. My sheep are calling me. My sheep are calling me. In turn, I want to take my sheep and graze it on the land. And in turn, I can hear my beautiful voices of the sheep. My sheep are beautiful. In turn, I want to take care of my sheep. In turn, it will take care of me. Shiliye aneye, shiliye aneye, shiliye aneye, aneye. Shiliye aneye, shiliye aneye, shiliye aneye, aneye.
I think it's important for me to educate the public about this special breed of sheep and then the meaning that it has to the Navajos. In the 70s, when there was a stock reduction, there was an elder from this community of Hard Rock that said, "Sheep is life. How can one live if their life is being taken away from them?" And to this day, I always remember that saying, and I live by that. I try and make, sheep is life to me and my family.
The baby cat na. At the sheep corral, the doggies wait. Reluctantly, you open the gate. Slowly you walk after them sheep. You feel like, whoo, little Bo Peep. The baby cat na. Getting plenty hot, you can smell the billy goat. Goat's going crazy, you wish you had a rope. Time goes a-crawling, then it stands still. Now you're thinking, this ain't no thrill. The baby cat na. You heard all the sheep and the goats back home. You wish you had help from your very own clone, but you are just a Navajo boy yet, huh? You're the real McCoy. The baby cat na. The baby cat na. The